tension with the colleagues is because you're dealing with an industry that had done things for 80 years, so you have the convention and standard of doing things. And so any upstart, right, that comes along and says, I think we could do it another way, is seen as being a heretic, at that time. And I wasn't doing it to upset anyone. I just said, now that, photochemicals moved into this world of pixels, and pixels don't have any conscience, right? And so human eye sees 10 million colors, we calculate 16.7 million. Right, so it really was, in my view, a matter of time until anything was possible visually, right? And of course, that was shot down by the powers that be at ILM at that time. So I had to prove it, So the T-Rex was sort of the classic ambush. I literally had to ambush people because the ship had sailed. They were going to do road prosthetic, stop motion. So I ambushed Cathy Kennedy, Frank Marshall, and Dennis Murin. They didn't know it was going to happen. Then everything changed. Or that was in November of 1991. I'd secretly been building the bones, and I built the bones of the T1000 walking, and so proof of concept. Then I built the entire skin, all what they called B-spline data back then. It was a very early forward kinematic system of Alias at that time. Then so Mark and I had decided, he shared the same attitude as I did, and he was kind of the cheerleader for it. And he had done the code for the Abyss, to skin the pseudopod creature. And so I secretly started to build the bones. And I knew when they were coming up, and I knew even if I had, Dennis had approached me and said, I heard a rumor you're building it, don't bother trying, it's not going to happen. There is going to be no computer graphics in this film, quote unquote. So I said, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyways. And I did. And I had the monitor position, they came walking in, and I ambushed them with a walking T-Rex bones, and everything changed. I freaked out. Cathy Kennedy patted me, like I've said it in various interviews, but she patted me in the back and said, you have a very bright future, verbatim. And that was the first and only time I ever met her. Because I was
good person to get that compliment.
But I was kind of effectively kept away because there's kind of like this animal in the basement that they're pushing food under, right? So, once the bone test they brought to Spielberg, and he kind of secretly approved for me to build the skin. So I built the skin. It took me about 4 months, and then I had a walk cycle, and we had ported to a different piece of software called Softimage version 2.6.1, which was an inverse kinematic system compared to the forward kinematic system. And so it took me, myself, and there's Mike Natkin and John Schlag. They were involved in writing the code, right? Because we're handling very advanced skin, and then this whole system about underlying bladders, that hung on the hierarchy of the bones that had to move. Essentially control the control vertices on the surface of the skin that made it jiggle, so I could layer secondary motion. So that was a cool thing. You do the principal walk cycle, write the file out, go home, watch wrestling, come back in, read the file up again, right? Animate the secondary, which was the bladder animation, write the file out, go home, watch hockey fights, come back in, right? Read the file up again, and nuance the animation. Whereas, with stop motion, it was the time of camera. And that was the difference. I could better the animation because nothing was going away, it being digital at that point. And then Joe Lettieri was writing a shader at that point, the shader being the actual texture of the skin and the look and everything like that. So we had that test done, and Spielberg saw it, and that was the infamous day when a walking full-range T-Rex, about 10-second shot. I'd done 3/4 angle, low angle, 35mm lens, Panavision lens. We had a background from National Geographic. We shot it, comped it in there. Spielberg, and it looked really good, And Spielberg said, "That's it. No more stop motion. No more motion. The whole film's going to be computer graphics." Then all shit came down. Well, immediately, like stop motion shops are put out of business like that. Tippett got really, really sick because this is going to be the ultimate stop motion thing. So we had to sort of build this kind of set of training wheels for a shop called the DID, stood for Dinosaur Input Device. We called it didn't because it didn't work. Really, but what it did allow for his shot, they only handled 5 shots of the 50. Myself and Eric Armstrong, animated the majority of the shots in the film. So, but Randy Deutscher was a very good stop motion guy, so he could pose them in digital, and we could extract that data, right, and have a general idea of what the amount of frames were in between the keys. So we could in between them at that point. So they handled those 5 shots, right? Some of the Rex shots, some of the Raptor And so the thing is, these devices were not going to allow for like the running sequence. So the first shot I had to do was a JC4 busting through the log. It took me about 3 months, 4 months just to figure out the run. You know, and a DID system, which is that has to be a very isolated system, could not, you know, run down a table as an example to extract that data. So computer graphics allowed you that freedom, right, to do it. And that became very evident through the process because everyone was kind of learning. Dean Cundy, you know, how do you shoot for this? Because typically your camera has to stay locked up. You know, we didn't have to do those types of things anymore. And these are what we're learning through this process. Terminator, the camera was locked out for most of the shots. You know, except for the walking out of the fire shot, you know, which I had done, which was extracted data from a Tondro camera, which is a motion control camera, early motion control. So, so we knocked out, you know, all those shots. Took us almost 2 years to do, you know, and then everything changed.
Steve, way back in 1995, when I was an intern, and I started working actually in 1995 at ILM, and he was the first supervisor who kind of saw my artwork and liked the way I drew storyboards, and so we started working together. And that was when our friendship began, and I learned a lot about all the things you maybe wouldn't hear about in press, and you know, what would be reported as like the events and things that would happen behind the scenes at ILM during the making of movies like The Abyss and Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park. So working with him, you know, he regaled me with all kinds of great, juicy stories about how things really happened and went down. And so ever since then, I think I had always knew like there was this cool story about the digital, you know, revolution that occurred at ILM, and I wanted to tell the story about that, not necessarily just about Steve, but just about this thing that happened. And then the movie evolved into a movie just about him. I would visit Steve. I was living in Seattle, and I would visit Steve in the Bay Area. I feel like every like 4 or 5 months, maybe.
Like that,
just kind of get more, you know, edit a little.
Some of it's a blur.
Yeah, a lot of it's a blur. Yeah, but I'd edit a little. I'd come and visit him, get some more information, ask him more questions, edit a little more. And also there were other people in the Bay Area. A lot of my subjects for the film were in the Bay Area. So whenever I found myself in the Bay Area interviewing other people, any of his colleagues, I would also stop by his house because we're friends. So I would see him anyway, and we would just film and do a little more cute questions. And yeah.
Just
So,
okay, you want to film? Okay, I'm just cutting metal now here and drinking beer. You're more than welcome.
yeah. So it was kind of a lot of verite stuff, a lot of just kind of let the camera roll and just chat, just as friends in a way. Yeah.